A chilling whisper echoes through the darkened hallway as the door creaks open, revealing a lifeless body sprawled on the floor, with no sign of the killer anywhere. Welcome to The Invisible Guest, a murder without a murderer. Grab a cup of tea, take a seat, and enjoy this twisted tale. If you're hooked, subscribe to our channel. Your support means a lot to us. Where are you watching from? Tell us in the comments below. Chapter 1: The Mysterious Arrival. In the quiet town of Eldridge, nestled between misty hills and whispering forests, stood the Grand Hawthorne Manor, a place where secrets lingered like fog on a cold morning. The manor had seen better days, its once vibrant walls now faded, and its gardens overgrown with wild vines that seemed to choke the life out of everything they touched. It was here that our story begins, on a stormy evening in late autumn, when the wind howled like a tormented soul, and rain pounded against the windows as if demanding entry. Eleanor Hawthorne, the elderly matriarch of the family, had invited a select group of guests to her home for what she called a reunion of sorts. Eleanor was a woman of mystery, known for her sharp wit and even sharper tongue. She had amassed a fortune through clever investments, and rumor had it through less savory means as well. Her guests included her estranged nephew, Victor, a slick businessman with a penchant for gambling; her longtime friend, Dr. Amelia Croft, a renowned psychologist who specialized in the human mind and its dark corners; and a young journalist named Lucas Reed, who had been digging into the Hawthorne's family history for months. As the clock struck 7, the guests arrived one by one, their coats dripping with rainwater. Victor was the first, stepping inside with a forced smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He greeted Eleanor with a peck on the cheek, but there was tension in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. Dr. Croft followed, her calm demeanor hiding a keen observational eye that missed nothing. Lucas was last, his notebook tucked under his arm, eager to uncover whatever skeletons lay hidden in the manor's closets. Eleanor ushered them into the drawing room, where a fire crackled warmly in the hearth, casting flickering shadows on the walls. The room was adorned with antique furniture and portraits of stern-faced ancestors who seemed to watch the proceedings with disapproval. She poured glasses of deep red wine and raised her own in a toast. "To old friends and new revelations," she said, her voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of something unspoken. As they settled in, Eleanor began to speak of the reason for their gathering. She revealed that she had recently discovered a long-lost family heirloom, a priceless diamond necklace said to be cursed. According to legend, the necklace brought misfortune to anyone who possessed it without rightful claim. Eleanor claimed she intended to return it to its true owner, but first, she wanted to share its history with those closest to her. Victor scoffed at the notion of curses, calling it superstitious nonsense, while Dr. Croft listened intently, her fingers tapping thoughtfully on her glass. Lucas jotted notes furiously, sensing a story brewing. The evening progressed, with Eleanor recounting tales of the necklace's past, how it had been stolen during a grand ball in the 19th century, leading to a series of unfortunate events for the thief's family. She described vivid scenes of betrayal, madness, and untimely deaths that followed the gem's path through history. The guests were captivated, hanging on her every word, as the storm outside raged on. But as the night deepened, strange occurrences began to unfold. A sudden gust of wind extinguished the fire, plunging the room into darkness for a moment. When the lights flickered back on, Eleanor was clutching her throat, her face pale. She whispered something about feeling watched before excusing herself to retire early, leaving the guests to ponder her words. Victor suggested they play a game to lighten the mood, a simple round of cards, but tensions simmered beneath the surface. Accusations flew subtly, Victor hinting that Lucas was there only to exploit the family, Dr. Croft probing Victor's recent financial troubles, and Lucas defending his journalistic integrity. The air grew heavy with unspoken grudges. Unbeknownst to them, an invisible presence lurked in the shadows, observing their every move. This guest was not one invited by Eleanor, but drawn by the curse of the necklace itself, a spectral force born from years of resentment and unfinished business. It moved silently, influencing events in subtle ways, a misplaced glass, a flickering light, a whisper in the ear that sowed seeds of doubt. As the chapter draws to a close, the guests retired to their rooms, each lost in thought about the evening's revelations. Little did they know that the true horror was just beginning, with the invisible guest poised to strike in ways none could anticipate. This sets the stage for deeper mysteries in the chapters ahead, where alliances will form and break under the weight of hidden truths. Chapter 2: The Vanishing Necklace. Midnight settled over Hawthorne Manor like a shroud. The storm had eased into a steady drizzle that tapped against the windows like impatient fingers. Victor stood alone in the library, staring at the empty velvet cushion inside the glass case. The diamond necklace was gone. He had checked it himself just hours earlier when Eleanor had dramatically unveiled it for the group. Now the case sat unlocked, the tiny brass key still dangling from its latch. He ran a hand through his thinning hair and muttered a curse. Footsteps echoed in the hallway, and Dr. Amelia Croft appeared in the doorway, her silk robe tied tightly around her waist. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked, her voice low. Victor shook his head and pointed at the empty case. "It's gone. Someone took it while we were all upstairs." Amelia stepped closer, her eyes narrowing as she examined the scene. No broken glass, no scratches on the lock. Whoever did this knew exactly where the key was hidden. She glanced toward the ceiling, as if she could see through floors to the bedrooms above. "Eleanor keeps that key on a chain around her neck," she told me once. Victor snorted. "Then either she moved it herself, or someone got very close to her tonight." They woke Lucas next. The journalist stumbled into the library in striped pajamas, his hair wild from sleep. When he heard the news, his drowsiness vanished. He knelt by the case, shining his phone flashlight across every surface. No fingerprints, no footprints in the dust. It's like the thing just evaporated. He looked up at them both. "We need to search the house before anyone leaves in the morning." The three of them moved through the darkened corridors, their shadows stretching long across faded wallpaper. They checked the drawing room, the dining hall, the conservatory. Nothing. In the kitchen, they found the back door unlatched, a thin line of rainwater pooling on the tiles. Victor pushed it open and peered into the night. Muddy tire tracks led away from the gravel path toward the old carriage house, but they stopped abruptly halfway across the yard, as if the vehicle had simply ceased to exist. Amelia shivered and pulled her robe tighter. "No one could have driven away without us hearing the engine."
Lucas crouched by the tracks, running his fingers along the edges. They're fresh, but look, the pattern ends here. He swept his light across the ground. No continuation, no drag marks. It's impossible. A faint scream cut through the silence from upstairs. They bolted back inside, racing up the grand staircase 2 steps at a time. Eleanor's bedroom door stood ajar. Inside, the room was in chaos. Drawers yanked open, clothes strewn across the floor, the mattress half pulled from its frame. Eleanor sat in the corner, her knees drawn to her chest, rocking slowly. The chain around her neck was snapped, the tiny key lying useless on the carpet. "They took it," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I woke up and felt hands, cold hands pulling at my throat. I couldn't move, couldn't scream, until it let go." She touched the red marks blooming across her skin. Then everything went dark again. When I opened my eyes, the necklace was gone and the window was open. Victor crossed to the window. Rain blew in through the gap, but the drop to the ground below was 3 stories straight down onto jagged slate tiles. No ladder, no rope, no footprints in the flower bed beneath. Lucas leaned out carefully, scanning the wall. Not even a scratch on the stonework. Amelia knelt beside Eleanor, gently lifting her chin. "Look at me. Did you see anyone? Anything at all?" Eleanor shook her head, tears cutting tracks through the powder on her cheeks. "Just shadows, moving, too fast. Like smoke with fingers." Downstairs, a clock chimed 3. The sound seemed to linger longer than it should, echoing through empty rooms that suddenly felt too large. Victor closed the window and locked it, his movements sharp with frustration. "We lock every door, every window right now. No one leaves this house until morning and until we find that necklace." As they filed out of the room, Lucas paused in the doorway, glancing back at the torn bedding. Something caught his eye beneath the overturned pillow. A single diamond, no larger than a raindrop, glinting coldly in the moonlight. He slipped it into his pocket without a word. The invisible guest drifted along the ceiling, watching them scatter like ants beneath a lifted stone. It had what it came for, almost. One piece remained, and the night was far from over.
Chapter 3: The First Blood. Dawn crept over Hawthorne Manor, pale and reluctant. The rain had stopped, but the air hung thick with damp and the smell of wet earth. Victor stood at the foot of the grand staircase, barking orders like a man used to being obeyed. Every door locked, every window bolted, every room searched twice. The necklace had not turned up, and neither had any trace of an intruder. Eleanor refused to leave her bedroom, claiming exhaustion, but her eyes darted to every corner as if expecting the shadows to lunge. Dr. Amelia Croft gathered them in the dining room, where breakfast sat untouched. The long mahogany table looked too large for 4 people. She poured coffee with steady hands, but her voice carried an edge. "We are dealing with facts," she said. "A necklace vanished from a locked case. A door was left open. Tire tracks appeared, then disappeared. Eleanor was attacked, yet no one entered or left her room. Either someone among us is lying, or we are all losing our minds." Lucas sat opposite her, turning the single diamond between his fingers beneath the tablecloth. He had not mentioned finding it. Not yet. Victor slammed a fist on the table, making cups rattle. "Stop talking in circles, Amelia. One of us took it. Simple. Who benefits most?" He stared hard at Lucas. "The reporter who just happens to be writing a book on cursed jewels?"
Lucas met his gaze without blinking. Or the nephew drowning in gambling debts who arrived first and left the party last. Victor half rose from his chair, face reddening, but Amelia lifted a hand. Enough. Accusations without proof waste time. We search together, no one alone. They split into pairs. Victor with Amelia, Lucas with the reluctant maid who had been given the day off but now trembled in her apron. The house seemed to groan around them, floorboards creaking under weight that was not there. In the attic, they found trunks forced open, old photographs scattered like fallen leaves. A portrait of a young woman wearing the missing necklace had its eyes gouged out. Down in the cellar, Lucas discovered a narrow door hidden behind wine racks. It opened onto a stone tunnel slick with moss. The air inside tasted of iron and rot. He stepped forward, flashlight beam shaking. Footprints led deeper, single file, pressed into centuries of dust. They were barefoot and impossibly small, like a child's. The prince stopped in the middle of the tunnel, just stopped. Lucas knelt, heart thudding. No smudge, no turnaround, as if whoever made them had stepped straight up into the ceiling. He was still staring when the maid screamed from the top of the stairs. He ran back to find her pointing at the kitchen floor. A trail of blood droplets led from the pantry to the back door. Fresh, bright, impossible to miss earlier. Victor and Amelia burst in, weapons drawn. Victor clutching an antique letter opener, Amelia a heavy silver candlestick. The trail ended at the locked back door. No smears, no handprints, just perfect, round drops that stopped as suddenly as they began. Amelia knelt, dipping a finger. Still warm. She looked up, pale. Someone is bleeding right now, inside this house. They followed the drops backward through the kitchen into the pantry. The trail climbed the shelves impossibly upward, across jars of preserves and sacks of flour, vanished into the ceiling. Victor stabbed at the plaster with the letter opener. Dust rained down, but nothing else. No body, no weapon, no explanation. A low moan drifted from the floor above. They took the servants' stairs 2 at a time. The sound came from the guest bathroom. The door was locked from inside. Victor threw his shoulder against it once, twice. Wood splintered. They stumbled in. Dr. Amelia Croft lay in the clawfoot tub, fully clothed, water crimson around her. A straight razor floated beside her wrist, which had been opened from palm to elbow. Her eyes were wide open, staring at the ceiling. She was still breathing, shallow, wet gasps. Victor dropped to his knees, pressing a towel against the wound. "Stay with me, Amelia, stay with me." Lucas scanned the room. Mirror fogged, window locked from inside. No footprints on the wet tiles. The razor was Eleanor's. He recognized the pearl handle from her dressing table. Amelia tried to speak, blood bubbling at her lips. "Cold," she rasped. "It held my hand, made me." Her eyes rolled back. Victor shouted for bandages, for anything. Lucas backed out of the room, pulse roaring in his ears. In the hallway, the wallpaper had a fresh slash, 6 feet long, as if clawed by something tall. Tiny droplets of blood dotted the roses in the pattern. Amelia's blood. Yet she had never left the bathroom. The invisible guest hovered above them, tasting fear, the way a tongue tests a cut. 1 throat opened, 3 still beating. The necklace waited, and the curse was hungry.
Chapter 4. The Locked Room Confession. Amelia died at 10:30.
The village doctor arrived too late, his black bag useless against the amount of blood that had painted the bathroom floor. He signed the certificate without meeting anyone's eyes, muttered something about tragic accident, and left as quickly as the muddy lane allowed. Victor carried her body to the library and laid it on the settee, covering her face with a silk shawl. The house felt smaller now, as if the walls had leaned in to listen. Eleanor finally emerged from her bedroom, wrapped in black lace like a mourning doll. She walked straight to the body, touched the cold hand, and whispered so low only Victor heard. I warned her not to dig too deep into mines that weren't her own. Then she turned and announced that no one would leave until the necklace was returned. The police could wait. Family business first. Victor laughed, a short, ugly sound. Family business got Amelia killed. Eleanor ignored him and pointed at the library door. She produced an old iron key from her pocket and locked them all inside with the corpse. Lucas protested, but the click of the lock silenced him. Eleanor dragged a chair to the center of the room, sat, and folded her hands like a judge. "We will speak truth now," she said. "No more games. The necklace chooses its keeper, and it never chooses kindly. I stole it back from a museum 30 years ago because it belonged to my mother. I thought I could end the curse by hiding it here. I was wrong. It wants blood for every hand that touched it unlawfully. Tonight, it started collecting." Victor paced in front of the fireplace. "You're saying a ghost murdered Amelia?" Eleanor nodded once. "Not a ghost, a debt. The necklace is only stone. The debt has no name." Lucas felt the single diamond burn against his palm inside his pocket. He had planned to reveal it later, use it as leverage. Now it felt like a coal. He stepped forward. "Then why spare the rest of us?" Eleanor smiled without warmth. "Because it enjoys the waiting. It likes to watch us turn on each other first." Silence stretched tight. Outside, the wind picked up again, rattling the windows like bones in a box. Victor stopped pacing and stared at Eleanor. "You knew this would happen? That's why you invited us. Bait." Eleanor inclined her head. "I needed witnesses. Someone had to see the curse fulfilled, so the story ends with me." She reached into her lace sleeve and drew out a small derringer, no longer than her hand. Victor froze. Lucas felt the air leave his lungs. "Put it down, Aunt Eleanor," Victor said slowly. She shook her head. "The debt wants a hawthorn life before it rests. I intend to pay it myself. Then the rest of you can burn the necklace, or wear it, or throw it in the sea. I no longer care." She raised the gun to her temple. Victor lunged. The shot cracked, deafening in the closed room. Plaster exploded from the ceiling. Victor wrestled the derringer away and flung it into the fireplace. Eleanor slumped back, tears cutting clean lines through her face powder. "You fool," she whispered. "Now it will take another." The lights went out. Not flickered, simply ceased, as if someone had pinched the flame of the world. Darkness swallowed everything. Lucas smelled ozone and wet stone. Something brushed past his cheek, cold as winter rain. A second later, the chandelier burst back to life. Eleanor was no longer in the chair. The black lace lay pooled on the rug, empty. The derringer sat cold in the hearth. Victor spun in a circle, shouting her name. Lucas dropped to his knees, clawing at the lace. No body, no blood, only a faint scent of lilies and the small iron key that had locked the door, now lying in the center of the empty dress. Victor grabbed the key and ran to the door. It opened easily. The hallway beyond was silent. They searched every room, every closet, every cupboard large enough to hold a woman. Nothing. Eleanor Hawthorne had vanished from a locked library while two men stood 3 feet away.
Victor sank onto the bottom stair, head in his hands. Lucas stood over him, the diamond now clenched so tight it cut his palm. A thin line of his blood dripped onto the carpet. Where it fell, the fibers darkened and spread like spilled ink. From somewhere deep in the house came the soft click of a door closing. Then another, and another. Each one deliberate, patient, counting down the rooms until none were left. The invisible guest walked the corridors, wearing Eleanor's skin like a coat that no longer fit. It had collected 2 souls and still hungered. The necklace was almost whole again. One more heartbeat to silence, and the debt would sleep. Until the next greedy hand reached out.
Chapter 5. The Mirror Room. Victor refused to stay another minute in the main house. He dragged Lucas by the sleeve toward the west wing, a part of Hawthorne Manor no one had entered in decades. Dust hung thick as curtains, and the air tasted of mold and old perfume. Victor carried the Derringer, now loaded with its single remaining bullet. Lucas followed, clutching the diamond that had begun to pulse faintly like a second heartbeat against his ribs. They stopped before a door covered in cracked green leather. Victor kicked it open. Inside lay the Mirror Room, a long gallery lined floor to ceiling with antique-looking glasses of every shape. Some were tall and gilded, others small and black-edged like mourning portraits. The storm had returned, thunder rolling overhead, and lightning flashed through the high windows, turning every reflection into a strobe of white faces. Victor stepped in first. His reflection stepped in from every direction at once, 100 Victors, all moving a fraction too late. Lucas hesitated on the threshold. The diamond grew warmer. He slipped it into his shirt pocket, where it rested against his skin like ice that burned. "We hide here until sunrise," Victor said, voice low. "The thing can't cross running water, and there's a stream beyond the garden. At first light, we leave." Lucas nodded, but his eyes kept drifting to the mirrors. In one, he saw himself standing alone. In another, Victor was missing. In a third, Amelia stared out, her throat still gaping. Victor noticed too. He smashed the nearest glass with the butt of the gun. Shards rained down, but the broken frame still showed his reflection whole and mocking. He smashed another and another. Each time the image remained untouched behind fresh cracks. "Stop!" Lucas grabbed his wrist. "You're making it worse." A soft laugh echoed from the far end of the room, feminine and familiar. Eleanor. They turned slowly. She stood before the largest mirror, an ornate piece with tarnished silver roses climbing its frame. She wore the same black lace, but it moved wrong, clinging to nothing beneath. Her face was perfect, too perfect, like a photograph held too close. "You locked me out of my own house," she said, tilting her head. "That was rude." Victor raised the Derringer. "Stay back." Eleanor smiled and stepped forward. The mirrors rippled as she passed, each one showing her a little more decayed skin, sliding from bone, eyes sinking into hollows. By the time she reached the center of the room, every reflection was a corpse, except the real one, still impossibly beautiful. "Give me the last piece," she said, holding out a hand. The diamond flew from Lucas's pocket straight into her palm, as if yanked by string. She sighed, like a woman slipping into warm water. There, whole again. The necklace assembled itself around her throat, stone by stone, clicking into place with wet sounds. Diamonds glittered against rotting flesh. Victor fired. The bullet punched through her chest and buried itself in the great mirror behind her. Black liquid oozed from the wound,
but she only laughed louder. "You can't kill what's already dead, nephew." She raised both hands. Every mirror cracked at once, spiderwebs racing across glass. Shards lifted into the air, hovering like a storm of knives. Victor shoved Lucas sideways as the pieces shot forward, embedding themselves in the opposite wall, in the perfect outline of a man, where Victor had stood seconds earlier. "Run!" Lucas yelled, but Victor was already moving toward the door. It slammed shut before he reached it. The key they had left in the lock spun by itself and fell to the floor. Eleanor walked forward, barefoot, leaving no prints in the dust. The necklace blazed, now bright as moonlight on snow. "You wanted the story, Lucas Reed," she said. "Here it is. Write that the curse doesn't haunt the house. The house was built to feed it. Every Hawthorne born owes a death. I paid mine years ago when I took the necklace. Amelia paid hers for trying to understand it. Now it's your turn to choose who pays next." Victor beat on the door with both fists. Wood refused to splinter. Lucas backed away until the cold edge of a mirror pressed between his shoulder blades. He glanced over his shoulder. His reflection was gone. The glass showed only the empty room. Eleanor stopped an arm's length away. "Give me the nephew, and you walk out with the greatest article never printed. Or stand with him and die forgotten. Your choice." Lightning struck close. For one heartbeat, the room went white. In that flash, Lucas saw them, hundreds of transparent figures pressed against the backs of the mirrors, hands clawing at glass, faces screaming without sound. All wearing the necklace, all Hawthorns, all waiting. Victor turned from the sealed door, eyes wild. "Don't listen to her. Shoot me if you have to, but don't let it take another soul." Eleanor extended her hand again, palm up. The derringer flew from Victor's grip into her fingers. She sighed, like a woman slipping into warm water. There, whole again. The necklace assembled itself around her throat, stone by stone, clicking into place with wet sounds. Diamonds glittered against rotting flesh. Victor fired. The bullet punched through her chest and buried itself in the great mirror behind her. Black liquid oozed from the wound, but she only laughed louder. "You can't kill what's already dead, nephew." She raised both hands. Every mirror cracked at once, spiderwebs racing across glass. Shards lifted into the air, hovering like a storm of knives. Victor shoved Lucas sideways as the pieces shot forward, embedding themselves in the opposite wall, in the perfect outline of a man, where Victor had stood seconds earlier. "Run!" Lucas yelled, but Victor was already moving toward the door. It slammed shut before he reached it. The key they had left in the lock spun by itself and fell to the floor. Eleanor walked forward, barefoot, leaving no prints in the dust. The necklace blazed, now bright as moonlight on snow. "You wanted the story, Lucas Reed," she said. "Here it is. Write that the curse doesn't haunt the house. The house was built to feed it. Every Hawthorne born owes a death. I paid mine years ago when I took the necklace. Amelia paid hers for trying to understand it. Now it's your turn to choose who pays next." Victor beat on the door with both fists. Wood refused to splinter. Lucas backed away until the cold edge of a mirror pressed between his shoulder blades. He glanced over his shoulder. His reflection was gone. The glass showed only the empty room. Eleanor stopped an arm's length away. "Give me the nephew, and you walk out with the greatest article never printed. or stand with him and die forgotten. Your choice. Lightning struck close. For one heartbeat, the room went white. In that flash, Lucas saw them hundreds of transparent figures pressed against the backs of the mirrors, hands clawing at glass, faces screaming without sound, all wearing the necklace, all Hawthorns, all waiting. Victor turned from the sealed door, eyes wild. Don't listen to her. Shoot me if you have to, but don't let it take another soul. Eleanor extended her hand again, palm up. The derringer flew from Victor's grip into her fingers. She weighed it like a toy. One bullet left. Enough for one choice. She offered the gun to Lucas, handle first. The mirrors began to bleed. Slow black drops sliding down like tears. The invisible guest had a face now, and it was tired of waiting.
Chapter 6. The Weight of a Bullet. Lucas stared at the derringer in Eleanor's dead hand. The pearl grip was slick with something darker than water. Victor pressed his back to the sealed door, chest heaving, eyes locked on the barrel. The mirrors bled faster now, black streams racing toward the floor, where they pooled and crawled like living oil toward their shoes. "Take it," Eleanor whispered. "One bullet, one life. The curse only needs a Hawthorn heartbeat to stop. Victor or you. It doesn't care which, as long as blood is paid." Victor shook his head slowly. "Don't do it, Lucas. If you shoot me, it still wins. The necklace stays cursed. More people die later. You, your kids, whoever writes the next story, break the chain." Lucas reached out. His fingers closed around the gun. It was heavier than it should have been, as if the single bullet inside had turned to lead the size of a heart. Eleanor smiled and stepped back, folding her arms. The necklace flared so bright it threw razor shadows across the room. Lucas raised the derringer. Victor closed his eyes. Lucas turned the barrel toward Eleanor and pulled the trigger. The hammer fell on an empty chamber. Click. Nothing. Eleanor's smile faltered. She looked down at her chest, expecting the wound that wasn't there. Lucas opened the cylinder. Empty. He had palmed the last bullet when Victor wasn't looking, back in the library hours ago, when fear still felt like something that could be outrun. "You lying bitch," he said quietly. "There was never a bullet left." The mirrors screamed. Every trapped soul behind the glass shrieked at once, a sound like tearing metal. The black pools on the floor surged upward, forming thin whipping tendrils that lashed at Eleanor's ankles. She stumbled, the necklace flickering between brilliance and dull rot. Victor kicked the door again. This time the old wood gave a tired groan and split along the grain. Moonlight spilled in from the corridor beyond. Fresh air cut through the stench of decay. "Run!" Victor roared, already moving. Lucas bolted after him. Behind them, Eleanor clawed at the air as the black tendrils dragged her backward toward the great mirror. Her mouth opened in a silent howl. The necklace shattered, diamonds bursting outward like shrapnel. Each stone hung in the air for a heartbeat, then shot into a different mirror, embedding itself in the glass with wet thuds. The mirrors sealed over, the screaming stopped, the room went dark. Victor and Lucas stumbled into the corridor and slammed the broken door shut behind them. They leaned against it, panting. Silence pressed in from every side, thick enough to chew. After a long minute, Victor spoke first. "You bluffed her with an empty gun." Lucas nodded, sliding down the wall until he sat on the cold floor. "Bought us 10 seconds. Hope it was enough." They listened. Nothing moved. No footsteps, no whispers, no clicking doors.
Only the storm, far away now, rumbling like a beast that had lost the scent. Victor offered a hand and pulled Lucas up. We burn the West Wing, tonight. Everything that thing touched. They found paraffin in the gardener's shed and matches in the kitchen drawer. The fire caught fast, hungry after years of damp wood and forgotten curtains. Flames licked up the walls of the mirror room, turning every reflection into a brief screaming face before glass exploded outward in the heat. They stood in the garden and watched the West Wing burn. Orange light painted the mist gold. Sirens wailed in the distance, too late to save anything but the rest of the house. Victor lit a cigarette with shaking fingers. "What happens now?" he asked. "When the police come, when they ask why my aunt vanished and why half the manor is ash?" Lucas looked at the single diamond he still carried, now dull as riverstone. "We tell them the truth," he said, "that Eleanor Hawthorne finally paid her debt and took the curse with her." Victor exhaled smoke toward the stars. "They'll lock us up." "Maybe," Lucas answered. "Or maybe they'll just call it a tragedy and board the place up. Either way, the story ends tonight." Behind them, the fire roared higher. For one instant, the flames shaped themselves into a woman wearing a necklace of living light. She raised a hand in farewell or warning, then collapsed into sparks that drifted upward and went out. The invisible guest was gone. The mirrors were gone. The necklace was gone. Only two men remained alive in the garden, breathing free air that no longer tasted of iron and lilies. Dawn was still hours away, but for the first time since arriving, the night felt finished.
Chapter 7. The Ashes Lie. Fire crews left at noon. They poked through the blackened West Wing with poles and muttered about faulty wiring and old houses. The chief shook his head at the melted mirrors, now fused into glassy puddles on the floor, and wrote "accidental" on his clipboard. Victor signed where they told him to sign. Lucas stood aside and said nothing. No one asked why Eleanor was missing. No one found a body to explain. By evening, the manor looked wounded but standing. Charred beams smoked against the gray sky. Victor poured 2 glasses of whatever whiskey had survived the kitchen and handed one to Lucas on the front steps. They drank without toasting. Victor spoke first. "I keep waiting for the other shoe, for her to walk out of the trees wearing that smile." Lucas rolled the dull diamond between thumb and forefinger. It never warmed again. "She won't. We saw it end." "Did we?" Victor asked. "Or did we just break the mirror and let it out into 7 years of someone else's bad luck?" Lucas had no answer. He dropped the stone into the gravel and crushed it under his heel. Gray dust scattered like ash. Night fell cold and ordinary. They slept in separate rooms, doors locked out of habit more than fear. No wind rattled the windows. No clocks chimed too long. Only the smell of burnt wood lingered in the curtains. Morning brought reporters. Lucas expected them. He gave them the story he and Victor had agreed on. Elderly recluse, distraught over lost heirloom sets fire to family wing. Takes her own life in the flames. Tragic accident. Police bought it. Headlines called it the Hawthorne Curse, finally claiming its last victim. Victor played the grieving nephew perfectly, tears on cue. Within a week, the manor was boarded up for probate. Victor signed papers in a city office and never looked back. Lucas filed his article under a pen name and watched it go viral, then fade. Readers loved a ghost story with a neat ending. They never noticed the gaps. 3 months later, Lucas woke in his London flat to the sound of dripping water.
The bathroom tap ran red. He turned it off, and the red kept coming, pooling on the tiles, climbing the walls in perfect round drops. He followed the trail to the hallway mirror. His reflection was missing. In its place stood Eleanor, smiling, the same too perfect smile. The necklace blazed at her throat, whole again. She raised one finger to her lips. Shh, you didn't burn all the pieces. Lucas reached for the light switch. The room plunged into darkness. When it returned, the mirror showed only him, pale and shaking. The dripping had stopped. No red stains on the floor. No water in the sink. Only a single diamond, no larger than a raindrop, resting on the carpet where no carpet had been a second before. He picked it up. It was warm. Somewhere far away, Victor opened his mailbox in a high-rise apartment and found a small black box tied with faded ribbon. Inside lay a pearl-handled Derringer and one bullet. A note in handwriting he had not seen since childhood read, "Debt travels. See you soon." The invisible guest had no name, no face, no fixed shape. It only needed a doorway, a shard of mirror, a forgotten stone, a bullet that never fired. And two men who thought the story was over. They were wrong.
Chapter 8. The Second Invitation. 6 months passed in uneasy quiet. Victor sold Hawthorne Manor to a developer who planned to turn it into luxury flats with a ghost tour in the basement. The West Wing was bulldozed and carted away in trucks. Lucas watched the live stream of the demolition from his flat, drank 3 fingers of cheap gin, and told himself the dust cloud rising over Eldridge was the last of it. Then the postcard came. Heavy cream stock, black ink, no stamp. Just his name on the front, in handwriting that curled like smoke. Inside, a single line. Reunion at the new address. Midnight. Bring what you owe. On the back, an embossed crest he had never seen before. A rose made of broken mirror shards. The address was a penthouse atop a glass tower in Canary Wharf, still under construction, cranes blinking red against the night sky. Victor received the same card. He phoned Lucas at 11:17 p.m., voice stripped of every defense. "I'm not going alone. Meet me in the lobby or I burn the damn thing and disappear to Lisbon tonight." Lucas was already in the cab. They arrived at 11:48. The building was dark, except for the top floor, where warm light spilled across unfinished marble. A private lift waited, doors open. No button for any floor but P. They stepped inside. The doors closed without sound. The ascent felt endless. The lift opened directly into the penthouse. Bare concrete floors polished to a mirror shine. No furniture. Only one wall of floor-to-ceiling windows showing London glittering like scattered diamonds. In the center. Chapter 8. The Second Invitation. 6 months passed in uneasy quiet. Victor sold Hawthorne Manor to a developer who planned to turn it into luxury flats with a ghost tour in the basement. The West Wing was bulldozed and carted away in trucks. Lucas watched the live stream of the demolition from his flat, drank 3 fingers of cheap gin, and told himself the dust cloud rising over Eldridge was the last of it. Then the postcard came. Heavy cream stock, black ink, no stamp. Just his name on the front, in handwriting that curled like smoke. Inside, a single line. Reunion at the new address, midnight. Bring what you owe. On the back, an embossed crest he had never seen before. A rose made of broken mirror shards.
The address was a penthouse atop a glass tower in Canary Wharf, still under construction, cranes blinking red against the night sky. Victor received the same card. He phoned Lucas at 11:17 p.m., voice stripped of every defense. "I'm not going alone. Meet me in the lobby or I burn the damn thing and disappear to Lisbon tonight." Lucas was already in the cab. They arrived at 11:48. The building was dark except for the top floor, where warm light spilled across unfinished marble. A private lift waited, doors open. No button for any floor but P. They stepped inside. The doors closed without sound. The ascent felt endless. The lift opened directly into the penthouse. Bare concrete floors polished to a mirror shine. No furniture. Only one wall of floor-to-ceiling windows showing London glittering like scattered diamonds. In the center stood a single antique chair. Eleanor sat in it, wearing a simple black dress, the necklace blazing at her throat, brighter than the city behind her. "You're late," she said pleasantly. Victor found his voice first. "You're dead." "Death is negotiable when the debt is unpaid," Eleanor replied. She lifted a hand. 2 more chairs slid across the floor and stopped behind them. "Sit." They sat. She leaned forward. "You burned my house, but not my mirrors. You crushed one stone, but not them all. Every shard you left behind grew a new doorway. Every reflection you didn't destroy kept a piece of me. I have been busy. The windows turned black. Not night, black glass. Hundreds of Londons flickered across them, each one slightly wrong. In one, Big Ben ran backward. In another, the Thames flowed upward. In a third, Victor and Lucas stood on the edge of the roof, arms outstretched, ready to jump. Eleanor rose. The necklace dripped light onto the floor, where it pooled and shaped itself into a perfect circle of diamonds around the 3 chairs. A boundary or a trap. "Here is the new arrangement," she said. "One of you wears it willingly, becomes the new keeper, lives forever, watches the world through every mirror ever made. The other walks away free. No curse, no visitor in the night, clean slate." Victor laughed, cracked and bitter. "And if we both say no, then the city pays," Eleanor answered. "Every reflective surface below us turns hungry at sunrise. Tube windows, shop glass, phone screens, 1,000,000 cuts for 1,000,000 strangers. Your choice." She stepped out of the circle. The diamonds sealed behind her like a mouth closing. Victor looked at Lucas. His eyes were old. "Tell me you have another empty gun trick." Lucas shook his head. "No gun, no exit, just us." Silence stretched thin as wire. Far below, a siren wailed and died. Victor stood first. He unbuttoned his coat, took it off, folded it neatly over the chair. Then he walked to Eleanor and knelt. "Give it to me," he said. "Let him go." Eleanor smiled, almost gently. "Brave boy." She lifted the necklace. It unclasped itself and hovered waiting. Lucas surged up. "No!" He stepped between them. "If anyone wears that thing, it's me. I wrote the story. I profited. I carry it." Victor shoved him back hard. "You have a life. I have debts and a string of bad choices. Let me finish something right for once." They faced each other inside the circle, breathing hard. Eleanor watched, like a cat at a mouse hole. Lucas spoke quieter. "You think dying noble ends it. It doesn't. You become her, forever, trapped in glass. You said it yourself. Break the chain." Victor smiled, for the first time all night, small and tired. "Then break it with me." He grabbed Lucas's wrist and yanked him forward. Together they lunged at Eleanor. She raised a hand to stop them, but they were already moving too fast. Victor wrapped his arms around her waist. Lucas seized the necklace with both hands and pulled. The chain snapped. Diamonds exploded outward like white fire. Each stone hung in the air burning, then shot toward the windows, embedding themselves with sharp crystalline cracks. The black mirrored city shattered into 1,000 falling shards that dissolved into ordinary night before they reached the street. Eleanor screamed, a sound that came from every throat she had ever stolen. Her form unraveled thread by thread of shadow and light until only the empty dress fluttering to the floor. The circle of light on the concrete went dark. Victor and Lucas stood alone in an empty penthouse. Wind howled through the open lift shaft. Somewhere far below, a crane light blinked red, then steady, then red again. Victor looked at his empty hands. Is that it? Is she gone? Lucas stared at the windows. Now just windows, showing a sleeping city. I think we didn't break the chain, he said slowly. We melted it down and scattered the metal. No more links to pull. They took the service stairs, 43 flights, legs shaking by the 20th. At street level, the night air tasted of rain and petrol and freedom. No sirens, no screams, only London breathing. Victor lit a cigarette, offered one to Lucas. They smoked without speaking until the filters burned their fingers. What now? Lucas asked. Victor dropped the butt and ground it out. Breakfast, he said. Then we disappear in opposite directions and never, ever look into a mirror the same way again. They walked east as the sky turned the color of weak tea. Behind them, the tower stood dark and ordinary, waiting for new tenants who would never know what almost happened on the top floor. The invisible guest had no doorway left, no shard, no stone, no reflection to hide inside. For the first time in 300 years, the debt was paid in full, and no one left to collect.
Chapter 9. The Quiet Years. 5 years slipped by like pages torn from a calendar no one bothered to hang. Victor vanished into the haze of southern Spain, running a tiny bar on the coast where the beer was cold and the mirrors were deliberately small. He sent Lucas postcards twice a year, always the same message in blocky handwriting. Still breathing, no reflections acting strange, you owe me a drink. Lucas kept them in a tin box under his bed and never wrote back. Some debts are best left unclaimed. Lucas himself moved to a narrow house in Edinburgh, high enough on the hill that the windows caught only sky and slate roofs. He wrote novels now, thick doorstops about missing sailors and lost cities, anything that stayed far away from curses and diamonds. The critics called his books atmospheric. Readers sent letters asking if the haunted lighthouse in Chapter 12 was real. He never answered those either. He avoided mirrors the way other people avoid ex-lovers. In the bathroom, he shaved with the cabinet door closed. In shops, he kept his eyes on the shelves. Once, in a hotel in Glasgow, he woke to find the bedside clock reflected the wrong time. He checked out before dawn and never returned to that chain. At night, he sometimes dreamed of the penthouse, of Eleanor dissolving into smoke and Victor's tired smile. He always woke before the fall, heart hammering against the ribs like a bird trying to escape a cage. Then, on a Tuesday in late October, the tin box under the bed rattled though nothing had touched it. Lucas opened it with the caution of a man diffusing something old and angry. On top of the postcards lay a new one, cream stock, black ink, no stamp. The crest of the broken mirror rose.
Inside, a single line in handwriting he had prayed never to see again. The debt remembers interest. On the back, an address in Prague. A date 3 days away. Midnight, of course. Lucas sat on the floor until the streetlights came on. He thought about burning the card. He thought about running. He thought about Victor pouring beer for sunburned tourists under a different name. In the end, he booked a flight. Some invitations are not requests. He landed in Prague at dusk. The city wore autumn like a velvet coat, gold leaves drifting across cobblestones, the Vltava River black and slow beneath the bridges. The address led to a narrow townhouse squeezed between a bookshop and a puppet theater. The door was painted dark green. No bell. It opened before he knocked. Victor stood there, thinner, sun-browned, eyes older than the rest of him. He wore a linen shirt and the same tired smile from the dream. "You came," he said. "I hoped you wouldn't." They didn't embrace, they never had. Victor stepped aside and Lucas entered. The house smelled of wood smoke and coffee. No mirrors on the walls, only empty nails where they had once hung. Upstairs, a single room waited. Bare boards, one table, 2 chairs, one candle already burning. On the table lay the necklace, whole again, diamonds catching the flame and throwing tiny rainbows across the ceiling like a disco ball made of ice. It looked harmless, almost cheap. Victor closed the door. No windows in this room, no way out except the way they came. "It found me in Malaga," Victor said. "Showed up in the ice bucket one morning, just sitting there. I ran. It followed. Prague was as far as the money lasted." Lucas stared at the necklace. How many doors did we miss? How many shards? "Enough," Victor answered. "It's patient. Grew itself back one reflection at a time. Car windows, sunglasses, a child's puddle. Every surface that ever held our faces." They sat. The candle burned lower. Shadows stretched and folded like origami cranes. Victor spoke softly. "Same deal as before. One wears it, one walks. Except now we know the fine print. The one who walks still carries a splinter inside. It just takes longer to cut its way out." Lucas laughed, a dry sound. "So we're here to flip a coin for who gets eternity and who gets 20 more years of looking over their shoulder?" Victor reached into his pocket and pulled out the pearl-handled derringa. Polished wood gleamed. 1 bullet this time. Real. He laid it beside the necklace. "Or we end the game entirely," he said. 2 bullets would be kinder, but we only ever get 1. Lucas looked at the gun, at the necklace, at Victor's steady hands. "You first, or me?" Victor shrugged. "Together, on 3. No speeches, no noble last words. Just done." They each picked up an object. Victor took the gun. Lucas lifted the necklace. The diamonds were warm now, pulsing like a throat. "1," Victor said. Lucas slipped the chain over his head. It settled against his collarbones, light as breath, heavy as guilt. "2," Victor said. Lucas raised the derringer, not at Lucas, at the candle. 3. He fired. The flame went out. Darkness swallowed the room whole. In the perfect black, Lucas felt the necklace tighten, then loosen, then fall away entirely. He heard it hit the floor with a sound like rain on glass. A second later, Victor's hand found his wrist in the dark, gripped hard. "Don't move," Victor whispered. "Don't speak. Don't even breathe loud." They waited. Minutes or hours. No light, no sound, except 2 hearts learning how to beat quietly. Then, from the table, the soft clink of diamonds scattering. A faint glow rose, not from the necklace, but from the bullet casing rolling across the wood. It spun, slower and slower, until it pointed between them like a compass needle. The glow brightened, revealing the necklace in pieces again, each stone cracked down the middle. From every fracture leaked the same pale light, now rising, swirling, gathering into a shape neither woman nor smoke, but something exhausted. It hovered for a moment, featureless, eyeless, ancient. Then it sighed, a sound like every mirror in the world breaking at once, and dissolved upward through the ceiling, taking the light with it. When it was gone, the candle relit itself, small, steady flame, ordinary wax. On the table lay only the empty derringer and a pile of gray dust where the diamonds had been. Victor exhaled first. Is that? Lucas touched his bare neck. No weight, no warmth, nothing. They opened the door. Dawn leaked in from a skylight they hadn't noticed before, painting the stairs pink and gold. Prague woke outside, church bells arguing over the hour. Victor pocketed the gun, habit more than need. Breakfast? He asked. Lucas smiled for the first time in 5 years. And then, a very long walk, in opposite directions. They left the house side by side, stepped into the bright morning, and did not look back. The townhouse stood empty behind them, door ajar, candle burning down to nothing. Somewhere far above, the last shard of the curse drifted apart on the wind, too thin now to cut, too tired to remember why it ever wanted to. The debt was ash. The story was over. And 2 men, finally, ridiculously, impossibly free, went to find coffee and a city full of windows that only showed the sky.
Chapter 10. The Last Reflection. As Victor and Lucas stepped onto the cobblestones of Prague's old town, the morning sun struck the river and flung 1,000 bright knives of light into their eyes. Victor raised a hand to shield his face. Lucas blinked, turned toward the nearest bridge, and froze. Every window of every building along the street had gone black. Not tinted, not dark, black like oil poured over glass. Faces pressed against the inside of each pane, hundreds of them, pale and still. Eleanor, Amelia, the Hawthorns from centuries of portraits, even versions of Victor and Lucas themselves, mouths open in silent screams. The necklace hung around every throat, whole and blazing. Victor swore under his breath. We didn't end it. We just moved the battlefield. The black glass rippled. One by one, the windows opened outward, though no hands touched them. Cold air poured out, carrying the smell of lilies and wet stone. The trapped figures stepped onto ledges, balconies, sills, and began to walk down the sides of buildings as easily as spiders. Their feet made no sound on brick or stucco. Lucas grabbed Victor's sleeve. Run! They ran. The city had woken, but no one else seemed to see. Tourists took photos of golden rooftops. Trams clanged past. A street musician played accordion for coins. The dead walked among them unnoticed, closing the distance with patient grace. They ducked into a church, heavy doors slamming behind them. Inside, stained glass glowed with ordinary saints and ordinary mornings. For a moment, the air felt clean. Then every colored pane darkened. The saints turned their heads. The necklace glinted at every holy throat. Victor laughed, a broken sound. We're idiots.
We thought breaking the necklace scattered the curse. We only set it free to choose a bigger mirror." Lucas backed down the aisle. "Then what is it? What does it want now?" The answer came from the vaulted ceiling, not in words, but in understanding that poured into their minds like cold water. The curse was never about the necklace. The necklace was only the first mirror, the first doorway. Every Hawthorne who stole it, wore it, coveted it, added their reflection to the debt. Centuries of greedy eyes staring into the same stones, each gaze leaving a copy behind. The invisible guest was never one spirit. It was all of them, layered like glass plates, growing thicker with every theft, every death. And now the final truth. The only way to end a debt that lives in every reflection is to remove the last reflecting surface capable of holding it. Themselves. Victor understood first. He looked at Lucas with something close to peace. We don't need a bullet or a necklace. We need to stop being mirrors. Lucas felt it settle in his bones. Every time they told the story, wrote it, remembered it, they polished the glass for the curse to live in. Memory itself was the final shard. They walked out of the church together. The dead had formed a silent ring around the doors, waiting. Eleanor stood at the front, no longer rotting or perfect, simply herself at every age she had ever been, overlapping like double exposure. Victor spoke first, voice steady. "Take us, but on one condition. When we're gone, you burn every memory of us, every postcard, every article, every photograph, every dream. Leave nothing that can reflect." Eleanor tilted her head. "And if one person somewhere remembers?" "Then you wait," Lucas answered. "But no one will. We'll make sure." They stepped forward. The ring closed. Cold hands reached out, not cruel, simply certain. Light folded around them, bright as the penthouse windows, bright as the fire that never quite consumed the mirrors. There was no pain, only a gentle pulling, as if someone were erasing pencil lines from paper. First Victor's outline blurred, then Lucas's. Their names slipped away first, then their faces, then the sound of their voices. The city around them kept moving, trams clanging, tourists laughing, the accordion playing a jaunty tune that had no business sounding over a disappearance. When the light faded, the street was empty. The windows were ordinary glass again, reflecting blue sky and golden leaves. A single postcard fluttered to the ground, cream stock, blank on both sides. A gust of wind carried it into the river, where it sank without a trace. No one noticed two men had been there moments before. No one remembered their names. The bar in Spain stood empty, sold to a couple from Madrid who never found any small mirrors in the back room. The narrow house in Edinburgh was let to a student who painted the walls bright yellow and hung fairy lights. The tin box under the bed held only dust. In Prague, a tourist took a selfie on the bridge. In the background, the water showed nothing unusual. No faces beneath the surface, no necklace glinting in the depths. The invisible guest had no host left, no story left, no reflection left to wear. The debt was not paid. It was forgotten. And in the end, was the only mercy the world ever truly offered. Like and subscribe if this story kept you up at night. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and what scared you most. Your support means the world to us. See you in the next tale. Stay curious, stay safe, and maybe, just maybe, cover the mirrors tonight.